from the Trump administration. He's flagged that pharmas are going to be next when it comes to tariffs. What does it mean for the European industry, and what might those tariffs look like?
Yeah, I think that is an exercise that we're all collectively trying to figure out ourselves, including the companies. Really, over the last 2 weeks, it's been the number one question on investors' minds. And we recently had most of our large European companies at our healthcare conference in Miami. And a company like Novartis has said, we think it's manageable within our current year guidance. That's about as much as we've gotten from any of the companies that we've spoken to in terms of what this may look like, just because they're global supply chains and, the ball keeps moving in terms of what the tariffs may end up looking like.
Well, it's interesting that President Trump alluded to Ireland being the target. Ireland, largely for tax reasons, has attracted an enormous number of U.S. pharmaceutical companies to headquarter there. But the Europeans are not actually in Ireland for the most part. So what might that angle look like from the Trump administration? Ultimately, it's the U.S. companies that are in Ireland. It's not the European ones.
Yeah, and so, would European pharma be, impacted more so than the U.S. pharmas? That's a question that remains up for debate because they're both investing heavily in both geographies. Novo, for example, is building a $4 billion plant in North Carolina. They've stressed to us that they have 10,000 full-time employees in the U.S. This truly is a global sector with global manufacturing chains. So how the tariffs are going to impact one segment of the industry versus the other, this is going to be a heavy topic for Q1 earnings, I'm sure.
And have investors, you said this is the number one topic, the number one question you're getting from your clients. Are they holding back from investing in the sector because of this risk?
Well, I think part of it is, pharma has historically always been carved out of tariffs. So this represents an incremental risk that pharma investors just have not had to worry about in the past.
Right.
On top of that, I think that with this current administration, the bigger worry, I think, is that, tariffs probably are going to be manageable. These companies have very high gross margins, but could something on drug pricing come back? There was an America First policy paper out a couple of weeks ago talking about the most favored nation theory for lowering prices for drugs for Americans. So I think drug pricing feels like the secondary worry for people in addition to tariffs.
And within the European pharma space, are there companies that are particularly exposed to the Trump administration coming down on drug pricing?
Well, I think for Novo's kind of been singled out a little bit just because it's, I guess, easier to analyze in that most of their revenues and earnings are generated from one drug. We know most of the production for semaglutide occurs in Denmark, though a lot of that finishing occurs in the U.S. So I think Novo is in the crosshairs a little bit just because it's so easy to analyze, and I think just obviously very, very public. Different administration members have tweeted about it, but that's about as much as we have in terms of thinking of relative impact.
You're right.